Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. As said before, you are at Humans, Hardware, and Headspace, and we are about to redefine office property management. We have an amazing crew here today from all over the world. I just found out we've got someone from Australia, 2 from New York, and one that's native here to Las Vegas. I'm Courtney Stern with Capital Asset Management. We are a small boutique, no, not small anymore. We are a mid-sized boutique real estate firm based out of Phoenix. We have locations in California, Hawaii, Vegas, and now Colorado. We strive every day to be better. Our slogan is actually commercial real estate better. I'm the Vice President of Office Assets, and I'm excited to be here today. Now we're going to turn it over to everyone so they can introduce themselves.
Everyone hear me? I hate talking on microphone. So
Loud.
I'm Jonathan Iger. I'm the CEO and president of Sage Realty. We're a 101-year-old firm based in New York City. We played in just about every traditional asset class. But for the last 70 years, we've basically been focused on ground up Class A office development and ownership. And we've been managing our own properties since the late 1960s. Currently, we've got 3 million square feet spread across New York City, strictly office.
I'm going to do the same. Can everyone hear me okay?
No, Mike.
Yeah? Great.
I like it.
Gets rid of the echo. So hi, my name is McMillan. I'm the CEO of a company called Equiem. We're a global technology company. Our platform really, put simply, is about helping buildings run better. And so it does everything from automating property management functions, helping visitors find their way into the building, and managing tenant communications, events, etc. We operate around the world. I think we're in about 18 different countries. Our biggest footprints are here in North America, where we work with Oxford Properties, Skanska, MetLife, and others that you would know. We also have a big footprint in Australia, in the UK, and in parts of Europe.
Thank you. Very impressive. Yeah. So I'm with Vice President with the Moynihan Group. We're a New York City. We have some real estate in New York City, Miami, LA, and a little bit in Florida. Basically, we have a mix. We have a mix of office space and we have residential units. We're working on some ground up projects. We just recently completed one. Very similar. I think we compete with Jonathan a little bit for just we're in the same neighborhood. And interestingly, the ownership of Moynihan Group started around the same time, probably the same era. So we're sort of like. So I would expect that our history is somehow similar. So it would be interesting to investigate that. It is.
Megan Levy, Vice President with Newmark. We're third-party property management, and we manage office, industrial, retail. I am responsible for Nevada.
There we go.
Right? So starting off, tying in, we're going to start of the role of manager and how that plays in. So the first question, I think, Larry, you get to start. How are the roles of the office property manager and the on-site teams evolving as buildings become more connected, service-oriented, and technology-enabled?
Well, that's a great question. So we have what we're seeing, I think, is that the essence of what our goal to be successful is, and that is to increase, to elevate the tenant experience across the board. I mean, that's basically what we're all competing to do. And since COVID, I mean, everything has sort of changed. So it's become more challenging. But I think basically, to answer your question, so, we have boots on the ground. We have people in the buildings that interact day to day with tenants and users, and basically we have back office people. And I think the goal really has to be to sort of like connect those two groups and to make sure that there's like a real sort of a real connection there, so that everybody's working in the same sort of direction. That's it.
And when you say to make the experience better, can you give examples? Or I don't know if someone else is already going to answer that in there where they go.
It's changed a lot, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, if there are any property managers in the room, put up your hand if you identify as a property manager.
I kind of do in some ways too.
So, I don't have to worry too much about offending people. But I mean, from when we started Equiem 14 years ago to where we are today, I think the role of property manager radically changed. And I think the expectations have risen significantly. I would have said property managers going back a decade were just very focused on, managing the contracts, making sure the building itself was functioning, making sure it was clean, but much less focused on the tenants and almost not focused at all on the tenant employees. And today, it's like you people have to be cruise ship directors. Like you've got to be running events, you got to be doing activations, you're doing wellness, you're putting up parties, you're, as well as running the building. So it's and you're not just thinking about the one contact per tenancy anymore. You literally need to think about the thousands of employees that are using your building every day. So I think it's changed a lot.
Tell you, it's an expanded role.
It's
right?
expanded with no more resources inside, right?
Yeah.
Budgets are lower, expectations are higher.
Absolutely.
Which is hard to do.
Some people's budgets.
None of us budget.
We can talk about that and how short-sighted that is when it comes to OpEx around tenant experience. Look, I think two things have shifted, and for us who've been in office for 70 years and who have been, I would say, tenant focused since the beginning of our developments. We developed a building that still stands today, 711 3rd Avenue. And one of the things that we did, rather than have a nice marble lobby, was we hired an artist named Hans Hoffman who did a custom tile mosaic that wrapped around the elevator core. And why did we do this in the early 1950s? Our president at that time, William Kaufman, believed that buildings needed to be humanized. And he equated the lobby of an office building to the foyer of someone's house. And what do you have in the foyer of house? Artwork or photographs of your family. He wasn't going to put a photograph of himself up. So we ended up with artwork. In the late 1960s, our vice president at that time was traveling Europe. Most people don't realize, right, the idea of the European concierge system that we're all accustomed to in an MGM today, and particularly a Four Seasons, an Amman, a Ritz-Carlton, that didn't basically exist in hotels in the late 1960s in the US, let alone an office building. He had this experience traveling Western Europe, came back. We had just started a property management company, and he implements what he felt was equivalent. What's effectively happened is twofold from the way we see it. One is, particularly over the last couple of years, we can talk about all these other macro societal factors, but what's really happening with commercial real estate and office is it's been a financial instrument for 70 years, right? And that's how you extract value out of the asset, simply looking at it as a financial instrument. Mm-hmm. That is not how owners look at hotels, right? Those are operational assets. And today, in order to be successful in the office world, you have to look at it as an operational asset. Why has that shift occurred? The shift occurs because everyone in this room and everyone who we serve as tenants and what we call members, who are the employees of those tenants, their expectation, their demand, right? Effectively, the customer expectation has changed. It has become elevated. Part of that's a macro shift, right? The iPhone is the greatest fucking culprit to this, right? We live in an on-demand world where if you think over the last 15 years, right, you were happy to get your package in 5 days, then Amazon introduced 2-day delivery, then next day delivery, then same day delivery. What I always tell my staff is, when I was growing up in New York City, my parents would have a folder of menus. We'd pick out where we were ordering from if they weren't cooking that night. And when I was old enough, I was the delivery person. I was DoorDash. They said, go around the corner and pick up the pizza, right? Today, I have to catch myself on the phone when I order on DoorDash or Grubhub or one of these 50 different services. And it tells me my food's going to be there by 6:56 and at 6:57, and I'm losing my mind, right? But we all experience this, right? Yeah. This is the society we live in. And what we don't do as property managers, as owners, is equate the impact of these societal changes on how we need to operate differently, because our customer, every one of us, has that expectation now. The idea that you can respond to a hot cold call in 24 hours because that's what's in the lease, fine, do that. They can't break the lease, but they're sure as shit not going to renew with you when the lease comes up.
Exactly right.
So
We find ourselves spending a lot of time aligning our people and our processes and our technology to make sure that we are reducing friction and frustrations and uncertainties. So communication is a big part of that. So, yeah.
And so do you guys feel that it obviously costs more to implement this, right? To get better customer service, to have a faster response. Do you see it directly, channeling through to where you can then increase the rents so that you're able to operate at a higher level and you can raise the rent and people will still show up and pay it? Or is that balance hard for you guys?
It may not raise the rent, but it might reduce your operating expenses as far as, the more streamlined you are, the less you have to spend on your property management team or staffing, which can reduce your OpEx, make you more efficient.
yeah, we take a slightly different approach, which is double down. Obviously, bring efficiencies and find particularly technology. We're at RETCON, find technology, talk to Equiem, right? Like on how that can be, or not seriously, but how that can be a tool. But here's the simple math, right? This is still a financial instrument. So in New York City, or any commercial office building, right? I've seen people quibble over, well, we have to cut back on or not implement these program activations, or let's not do this type of service, right? Because they don't want to increase OpEx. And I get that in this economic environment, right? But the simple math is this, right? For a building that blends to $70 a square foot, which is pretty standard in New York City right now, the loss of a 10,000 square foot tenant is going to cost that ownership group at least $1.8 million in a reduction in cash flow. Right? So that's 10,000 square feet in a 600,000 square foot building. And we're going to sit around the table and talk about, let's not add 50, 100, 150. Let's not introduce a warm body concierge, right? In it. Let's not, let's build this amenity space at $5, $6, $10 million and not staff it.
Right.
Or staff it with one person, but who also has 3 different roles, and is typically never there. That's crazy and short-sighted. And I understand it. I understand what, for those of you in property management, what you're up against with your CFO and your asset manager, but just give them that stat, right? It's the most short-sighted thing.
So this goes directly into our second question, which is the operational impact of everything. So the question is, with so many solutions entering the office market, how should operators evaluate which technologies truly align with the building's strategy and deliverable, measurable operational impact? And how can partners help demonstrate that value?
One of my favorite topics, I think. Can I answer this?
Yeah.
You're being here answering this, so go ahead.
Okay, so first on the topic of how should people analyze which technology to put in? If it's not solving an actual problem, if it's not replacing a job to be done, then don't put it in. And I think one of the things that Equiem struggled with over the years is exactly how to define the ROI of our platform. Because in theory, the ROI is tenant retention, right? It's what Jonathan was just talking about. It's like, and we have customers. We have 20 buildings with one customer in New York, and they refer to it as an insurance. They say it's insurance. You know what I mean? Like, why would I not pay this tiny amount to keep my tenants happier? But it is a long game in terms of measuring tenant renewals, right? And what impact a technology platform or a yoga class or a Christmas party had in terms of tenant retention. So I think what you need to do, and what we work with our partners on, is break it down and make it simple. And we've created, and I think you can do it for any technology platform or any operational solution that you're looking at, is actually break down the ROI and set clear goals before you implement, and make sure those goals are shared. One of the biggest things that we find gets in the way of implementing technology and getting value from it quickly, and we measure time to value, is that the person that bought the technology is maybe wants it to work, but the people that are using it or being asked to use it don't share the same goals. And so have to have top-down goals, have to have clear KPIs, and have to break those into bite-sized pieces that are achievable. And a day one target might just be adoption. That's the first step, is get people using it, get property management using it, get tenants using it. And obviously then you can start to measure other things. Have I been able to collect feedback from tenants but I couldn't get yesterday? Do I know more about my tenant happiness today than I did yesterday? Mm-hmm. Do I know more about what rooms they're using? So, being able to measure things can also be kind of the second step before you can then actually start to see, well, have I actually driven an increase in tenant satisfaction, right? Has the needle moved in terms of happiness?
So they're as you were just mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
top down and endorsement. So everybody has to endorse it. So there's a few things that we do that everybody has to endorse. What you just mentioned, the technology that we try to implement, that we buy, and when sometimes I find that in our organization, one of the challenges we have is we buy technology and we use 2% of it. I've been doing that my whole career, buying technology and then somehow, some way, not being able to use so much of what it can do. But you also meant, so it's an endorsement, top down and bottom up. One of the other things along that line is like safety, for instance, or in construction anyway, it would be like a safety program. It has to be endorsed from the top to the bottom. And the people that manage, that are really responsible to manage that, have to really jump in and demonstrate to everybody that this is a primary importance. And it goes to, I'm using that as an example, but basically with your sorts of technology and all this information that you can help us gather has to be like really endorsed by the whole organization. Interesting.
Everyone on board.
What are you seeing in your work that requires this endorsement of this use, this as Jonathan mentioned, operational asset, so to speak? What do you say?
Sure. So tenant platforms that make it easier for your tenants by having their lease documents, their rent statements. Tenants need to get into that portal and use it. And so we need to be able to track who's using it and are they using it frequently. But also we just rolled out online certificate of insurance tracking, where we have a partner who uses AI to scan their certificates of insurance and email them whether they're compliant. And part of the success that we've experienced around that is that we built into our property managers' performance priorities and goals. This is something that we are adopting. This is what success looks like. And that's been huge for us, just to be clear about what we expect. And then with our tenants, adoption, you need to communicate with them and tell them, here's what's coming, here's what it's going to do, and here's what it does for you. And it may be that it makes your life a little easier. It may be that it saves operating expenses and, we can decrease your CAMs, things of that nature. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Larry.
So when I was reading this question, I kind of leaned into the partnership, which I know that we did talk about. One thing at our company, Capital Asset Management, we're doing is we're leaning into our vendors. Mm-hmm. We've developed this preferred vendor program where, we work as a team. And so we say, you're a preferred vendor. We're going to include you on all of our bids that we do. And in turn, you're going to be a great resource for everyone in our company. And we're going to be able to trust your opinion and trust that you're giving us honest answer. You're always going to give us a fair price, right? Because we're going to give you business, but we also want a great price. But we're also going to push you to be at the forefront of technology, right? So if you are a preferred vendor, you got to be coming to us with the most amazing things that are out there. We did this recently with our landscapers. They just did a presentation on drones at our company.
Wow. And
they showed us how they droned one of our largest centers, and you could see every nook and cranny there. And they said, your roofers can use this, your HVAC vendors can use this. And we were like, you just close the deal on becoming our preferred vendor, right? Because no one else has presented this to us. So it's a push and pull, right? Like help us keep our operational costs down and give us that technological advance that we need. So,
and the vendors should like that. You know,
Right.
like as a vendor, you want to be pushed. You know,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. It reminds me, we have Canary Wharf Group in the UK, which even though we're sitting here in the US, most of you would know it. Massive, you know, mixed use. There are 108,000 users on the platform there, which stretches us. You know, like tens of thousands of visitors processed every day, multiple buildings, a ton of stuff going on. And the team there are insanely great. Like they use the platform so well, and they're always coming up with new ideas. You know, they've created an intern club. They've got memberships running. They've got credits for, you know, for loyalty. They use every part of our platform,
That's great.
which is great. And they were the ones actually that pushed us 18 months ago to launch our first AI tool. You know, they were like, we want innovation. What have you got next? And we're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. But, you know, it's true. And Jonathan, we were talking about it in New York. Like the platforms that you're using and the vendors that you're partnering with, they should be innovating and the platforms have to be evolving because to John's earlier point, things are changing all the time. And the platforms that you're putting in your buildings to interface with your tenants or that your property managers are using should be best in breed, and they should be ever evolving to kind of meet these new expectations. And that does include, you know, the way we interface with them. You know, we're not going to be clicking around apps in the future. We're going to be talking to our building, you know.
Great. So our next question was on scaling this. I feel like we kind of hit that. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to it. For the sake of time, I might skip it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we're going into future proofing, right? So what role does this platform consolidation play in reducing friction for management teams? And how are you future-proofing your technology ecosystem as smart systems continue to evolve?
I can totally take that one.
Go for it.
I love when we integrate platforms because in addition to running Nevada, I also am day-to-day property management, boots on the ground. So the fewer systems I have to bounce between, it makes my life easier, which is much appreciated. But the less time I have to spend on an asset, the better my efficiency and effectiveness is.
Let me just challenge everybody.
Right.
Everybody in this room. So we have a property in Manhattan. It's one of the last large remaining parcels. And I'm going to say about 7 years ago, we built the foundation and we stopped the work. It's a very large project, a project that's too big for us to do without we really need an anchor tenant, an office tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the pencils down 7 or 8 years ago, if you can imagine. It's fully built and fully designed. The working drawings are done. I mean, it's literally all the pre-construction is complete. And then COVID came along, so the pencils really were. It was like an afterthought. So now here's the challenge: what has happened in the last 7 years or 8 years? What do we have to incorporate into that building to make it state of the art? To take it into what looks like is going to be. Let's see. This is 2026. I mean, it's really going to be in its prime. 2031, 2032. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting challenge. It's my challenge right now because there is some likelihood that we'll restart the construction, but there you go. I mean, that's the biggest challenge is to figure out how we got to with data points and how do we, and then let's just talk about like what that's going to look like.
Right. I don't think you can future-proof a building, and I think if you try, you're gonna fail. I do think you have to look to the future. We built one of the first, substantial amenity spaces in New York City in 2014. I demolished it in 2020.
Wow.
Okay.
It wasn't even paid for by that.
And no, it was not. And I redid it. Now, most people can't or won't do that. We had the resources and the economic models supported it. But again, that's 6 years. I think that there are enough markers for certain components that absolutely, right? You see how people work in the past, you see how they work today, you make some assumptions on the future, and there are some connected lines, right? Regardless of how much our industry and the way that people work have shifted. So, when it comes to amenity space, do you need a gym or not need a gym? That's to be determined. But do you need conferencing and meeting rooms? Absolutely, right? If not a gym, probably at the scale, last mile, bike, showers, lockers, those things are important, right? On the technology side, though, and we're at RETCON, so I think it's really interesting that of the people I've met and seen out here, no one is solving the number one issue that our industry has. And I've been investing and advising prop tech companies before we called it prop tech. There is no true API layer to be able to connect systems to. So in the food tech industry, there's this company called Omnivore. And Omnivore is developed to allow for developers and companies, right, to effectively plug and play so that if maybe you guys have walked into a restaurant more recently, 5 years ago, you walked in and you would see 5 different iPads or tablet devices, right? One for DoorDash, one for Uber Eats, one for Seamless. Half the time it did not integrate with their own POS system, their inventory tracking, so on and so forth. And so this company created the true API layer for all of these things to interconnect with. We don't have that. And until we have that, then going into the difficulties of change management, simply on introducing technology, that the technology doesn't speak to each other. To a certain extent, you can pay Cherry $250,000 a year minimum. That is not a viable solution for 98% of the customers out there. Great for the Blackstone and the Brookfields, but I can't afford that at an operating company level. That's what needs to be solved for. And when that gets solved, and it is more important today than ever before, because everyone out here and so many people who are here, and maybe some of you guys in the audience right now, right, you're pitching some level of AI, right? Everyone now has the chatbot. So instead of going in and looking at a dashboard, although dashboards are probably of more utility than a lot of chatbots, go in and ask the question specific to whatever that product offering is. But the power of that is when it's fully combined, right? So I don't just need to know what's in a lease. So these lease abstraction AI services, they're great. Mm-hmm. But I'm not paying for that, unless it can also interconnect with Yari, which also can interconnect with my tenant experience app. So I can see the entirety of that tenancy. What are they paying? How happy they are? How are they using the space? What are their largest issues? How quickly have we addressed them? So on and so forth. AI relies on the data that you have and interconnected data within a relational database, and we do not have that. So we're not close to future-proofing shit.
I agree, and it's the biggest pain point for all the vendors as well, because customers will say, they've got to make shit. It's just not that simple. Mm-hmm. And so, if someone could do that, that'd be great. Can you organize that? Okay. It's complicated, right? And it's actually one of the reasons Equiem started out is like what I would refer to as like tenant engagement 1.0. So like at the first version of the platform was setting emails to tenants and running events. And actually the first version of our platform, you could order a coffee from the retailer downstairs and get it delivered to your desk via concierge. And this is before Uber Eats was at least in Australia.
This was not in the US.
This is in Melbourne. Anyway, one of the reasons this frustration is actually the reason why we ended up expanding the platform and expanding the platform and expanding the platform, because it was actually easier to have a bunch of native operational tools in the one platform than to integrate with the likes of Angus and Julie Iger and others, because it never quite works. You know what I mean? And it's kind of janky, and then you can't get you've got bad experience paying duplicate fees, duplicate systems which you're using out of, and you can't get the data out. And so we've ended up building, but it doesn't get rid of the need for integration. If I look at we spend about $7 million a year on product development, and I look at where that went in the last 12 months, and we'd still be spending about 40% on either API development for ourselves or various integrations. And it's mainly access control, CAFM systems, some parking, and the list goes on. It's just, it doesn't go away. But it would be much easier if there was a single taxonomy, a single data structure that everyone was using. But we don't even have that.
No, we don't. We're seeing it within verticals within our industry. So access management is a good example. If any of you own buildings where your access management system is not homologulated, we understand that the cost, right, if you don't have, non-proprietary Mercury boards and other components, right, obviously, and then moving over, and the fear to move over and how difficult that just becomes. And then you also then have to deal with the integration or the reintegration of the visitor management system. So there's this company called Swift Connect. They have solved for this specific with access management. They've built a technology layer that sits on top of, the top 10, right? Linnell Gallagher, AMAG, you name it, right? Unless you're proprietary and you're like Castle. Sorry if Castle's in the audience, but time to open up the moat there. And they have solved for this, right? And I know the owner, I've spoken to people who adopted their technology, and just how streamlined it is. And then they built a beautiful UI UX on top of that, where everything is managed there. No one is ever going into Linnell or Secure or AMAG system. They are simply going into Swift Connect to control buildings across the country, potentially, or across the world even, on one operating platform, right? That's a homologulated system, effectively dismogulated below. We need that across the board. That's how you can start to get to a level of future-proof, because then everyone's building on the same thing.
Yeah, great.
So,
is there anything else? Well, okay, so our next question is about operational excellence. But everything you guys just said kind of made me feel like we are not operating that well. But let's talk about how, if we are doing all of these things, even though they're not all connected as well as we would like them to be, what approaches have been most effective in the building adoption among property teams and office tenants while still maintaining this operational excellence?
Yeah,
Megan,
I've been talking a lot, but I'll have to jump in.
Yeah, we found that training our tenants helps. Sitting down with them, showing them what resources we have available, and then following up with something visual. That way, you're hitting whether they're an auditory learner or somebody who's a visual learner. But tenant training is huge, and you need that warm body who has time to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we find that a lot of our tenants basically share the same. I mean, the goals are the same. They want to. It's almost a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how in our buildings that are what I say are at a level of excellence. And we have the best. We have the best relationship with tenants, and our tenants seek to participate. They seek to understand what challenges we face, and they seek to sort of share with us the challenges that they face, and then we address those. That takes a lot of energy, but I agree with you. I think it's
huge. There's a big difference between having good and bad in that space. I'm just like doing Rolodex got
Yeah.
who's Equiem, one of Equiem's customer success managers down back here. He probably deals with over hundreds of property managers.
Wow.
Big, vast gap between I'm just going to say it, between good and bad and awful. Vast gap. And I'm going through Rolodex customers, obviously we'll not be naming them, but I would say you got to pay promptly, like as a starting point, if you want operational excellence in your buildings. Like we see some of our customers, property managers that they're recruiting are just not, I don't think they're paying them very well.
Mhm.
And as a result, they're losing them. And when you've got property managers who are overworked and underpaid, and then they turn over, this is just a flow-on effect. Like you can't create operational excellence without a good understanding of the tenants and good relationships with tenants, good quality communication, and these are the things you need to be hiring for and paying for, and then you will get a great outcome. And it's very, very obvious, certainly as a vendor that lives and breathes, our platform is about creating this operational excellence and better services. And so when we have this dynamic of like, okay, it's this type of property manager or this type of property manager, it makes a huge difference. And you can immediately tell the relationships that exist in that building the minute you try to launch a platform like ours. Even the adoption of the platform boils down to what relationships has the property manager got before we even entered the game, right? If they've got good relationships, platform adoption takes off. If they don't, it's very evident because they can't even get it in front of tenants to tell them about this new thing. So that's my view.
I think this ties back to what we were talking about at the beginning of kind of how real estate has changed, how property management has changed, and thereby the definition of operational excellence has changed. Before we put a lot of money into tenant and member experience, we painted our slop sinks 4 times a year. That's crazy. That is an absolute waste of money. The reason we did that was to communicate to the vendors who work for us that if we pay that close attention to detail at the back of the house, imagine how close we pay in the front of the house, right? 25 years ago, every one of our property managers came out of the engineering department, right? Your typical,
Nuts and bolts.
Right. You were an operating engineer, lead / assistant chief. And then, some of those then went to property management, portfolio management. And we still see some of that today, right? I can teach anyone how to be a traditional property manager. I can teach you to a certain extent, right? But at the heart of what I need from a property manager is much more akin to a general manager of a hotel, right? And if you talk to people at Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons and Six Senses and on and on and on, and Marriott Courtyard Inn, right? You are looking for certain innate qualities that those people have that have nothing to do with actual skill sets, right? It is personality-based, concepts.
Relationship building.
Absolutely, right? The same as, for anyone who's been in sales, like you can teach someone how to sell something, but there has to be a personality. You have to have that love for what you do. There's this concept in Japanese culture called omotenashi, right? Which is, there's no direct English translation, but it is effectively being fulfilled by providing service to someone else, right? And that's how, right, someone who's a janitor or in the maid staff of a hotel in a Japanese hotel, right, in how they look at their job. And so you need to find those people. And then the last thing I'll say, right, it's humans and technology today. Just touch on the human side. I think we are inundated. We're at this conference. We're inundated with people pitching us products. And what we don't do most of the time is we don't step back and ask ourselves, what is it that we need to solve for? And at least for us, an organization, what we did was, it wasn't on a micro tactical level at first, right? It was this macro realization of an on-demand economy, right? Elevated expectations, decentralized workforce way before COVID, right? I think the U.S. Labor Bureau of Statistics, JLL supported it. By 2050, 50% of the US white collar workforce would be defined as nomadic, not having a set desk in an office building. COVID just sped that timeline up, and we were already on that path. So the first thing you need to start to look at is, one of the most basic things, communication. How has communication changed in the last 5, 10, 15 years, right? 15, 20 years ago, right? It's a phone call, or you're stopping by the property management's office or the security desk to relay the issue, right? Then we had the early advent of Angus and work speed, right? And now you're swiping and you're clicking and you're hitting buttons, right? Stay at Four Seasons right now, right? Download their app. There's Four Seasons chat. You go on and you simply say, this is what I need, whether it's a reservation, whether it's guidance on what museums are open the next day, whether it's your HVAC's not working or your TV has an issue or your faucet's dripping, or where can I just get the best pizza? Like that's how people communicate. And they can do that through WhatsApp, through Facebook Messenger, through text. Right? It's about us meeting the customer where they're at, as opposed to implementing things that force the customer to meet where we're at.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday, we were on a panel where we were watching a panel, and she said that you can walk into a building and you can tell if the property manager is happy. And it goes to the point of, we were trying to tie it all down to the technology, but it really just started with the human, right?
Yeah.
And to answer your question on should we pay these people more, I don't know that necessarily solves it, because it's like people just have to be happy at their job and want to do their job, but that I guess would help. But it is hard finding those people, but once you do it, it is absolutely great, and you can actually see it in the building.
Well, and it's not really a field that people train for. You don't necessarily know that property management is a job that you can get coming out of college or, coming out of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard to find those people that are good at math, good communicators, have that fire in their belly, and quite frankly, don't mind being yelled at or having those difficult conversations because, hello, that's, we deal with that on the daily. So that's a great point. But I think pay helps.
Yeah. Well, we have about 2 minutes left, I would say. So I'm going to let you guys pick the question. You can either tell us one thing that you did in your career that was risky or turned out well, or you can just give everyone in this room one last piece of advice that would help their week to be more successful. We'll start with you, Megan.
I think soliciting feedback from your tenants and your property management teams is vital. However you choose to do it, getting that information and using that to inform your decisions is really important for you to be able to deliver the best, operationally with your people and your teams.
I would say that if your goal is to be successful and meet the needs of tenants, your partners, basically, I would say it starts with doing the little things every day and spending a lot of energy on the small things, because the larger decisions that need to be made by an organization, wherever you are in an organization, do the little things and get them done and spend the time on it and work early and stay late and it gets done.
Good.
I guess risky, but turned out well.
And you're going to check that one.
Expanding Equiem to the USA.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Bring my family to New York. I think when we had one customer in New York, one customer in the whole of the US at that point. And yet loved every minute of the 5 years I spent in New York and the States. So that worked out okay.
No one knew what a 10 experience app was when Gabby came to the US, right? We were internally trying to develop our own 120-page scope of work because no one else was out there doing it. For me, go out and just break some shit. I think we're all so hesitant, and we all have bosses, or almost all of us have bosses and someone we need to answer to, and teams. Everyone's looking for these, concise, laid out programs. The consumer expectation is shifting rapidly. Mm-hmm. And while I do not agree that the consumer is always right, if you have a relationship with a tenant or a space decision maker, in one of your properties, go have a conversation with them. Tell them, hey, these are the couple of the ideas that we have. And then before you try to stand up some year-long property activation program and bring your marketing team and what are we going to call it and come up with a design and come up with a 6-month calendar, go bake some fucking Toll House cookies, put them on a tray, put them in your lobby, see how happy
It works.
your
People want free food.
your tenants are. Right.
Your lobby will smell like cookies.
Just have your property manager sit at the reception or security desk for an hour for the next two weeks, and then with no agenda, and then go back to them 10 business days later and say, how'd that work out? What did you learn? Is this something we should implement? Just go do that stuff. We spend way too much time trying to perfect programs and get all feedback and data. And just go try some shit, break some stuff, and communicate if you have to upwards to say, hey, I got 6 ideas and 3 of them are going to fail, but I'm going to make sure that in those failures, they don't cost the company more than $5,000. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Go do that.